I'm recording this session so you can access this down the road if you want. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. So my name again is Jim Thompson for those of you who I haven't met or been introduced to when you first dialed in. I'm the president of Concentric Management Systems. We like to shorten that and just go by Concentric. It's a mouthful. We were founded in 2003 up in Columbus, Indiana, and then moved from the state of Indiana down to South Carolina in 2010. And we have kind of our headquarters in downtown Charleston, and then subject matter experts that are kind of all over the place. There are typically 3 to 5 of us in this office that kind of run the operations on a day-to-day basis. We have a pretty strong presence in kind of the Indiana up to Milwaukee area, and then a group kind of Charleston down to Florida, southeast coast. Like I said, feel free to ask any questions that come up. The more questions you ask, the more interesting it is to watch the video in the future. Other folks, may have similar questions to you. This particular forum is the 8th forum in a series that was started in August 2013. And what we try to do, especially as the standard gets closer and closer to the international standard release, is we try to do at least once a month. Typically it's on a Wednesday, the last Wednesday of the month, right in the middle of the day, kind of a lunch and learn. Some folks choose to take the video and actually sit down with their auditors or the management staff and do a lunch and learn and actually watch the video at another time. I actually have a customer that's doing that today. So feel free to do that. Feel free to pass this along to suppliers. It doesn't cost anything. It's short. For me, it's just a way for us to kind of get the name of Concentric out there, so we're recognized in the marketplace as a resource should the time come that you need help. So that's a bit of the commercial side of things. So I'm going to be focusing this presentation, as I said, on the risk-based thinking changes, which is really looking as if it's going to be the biggest change. I mean, there are the numbering, shuffling of the numbers type changes and some of the other things that a lot of us are going to have to deal with. But the concept of risk-based thinking is a rather large change. And it's actually, we had a pre-conference workshop last Wednesday before the Low Country Quality Conference. And I taught that workshop. It was 8 hours. It's exclusively to focus on risk-based thinking. So it is a rather deep dive topic. So we'll spend probably about 15 to 20 minutes of this hour talking about that. So the projected changes and the timeline of the projected changes. So back in June 2012 is when the initial discussion of the review of ISO 9001 and its associated documents started. And we're looking at September if no strange conversations or major changes occur, which is really not expected. So September, October timeframe is the projected timeline for that release. So just kind of a blitz through the top 3 management system standards and how they align. I don't want to spend too much time on these 3 so I can put more time towards the risk-based thinking. But the current 9000 family has the 8-clause structure. There's 1.2 million organizations globally that are registered. So they're certified. They have this piece of paper that says, you meet the minimum requirements. That's a crazy big number. So think about all of the additional organizations that may use 9001 as the baseline for their quality system, and they're not registered. So it's got to be in the 2 to 3 million. So it's a very, very, very large international standard. It's the most widely used standard, 140 plus countries. We're at Rev 4. basically now, and the next one will be the fifth revision. 14,001, a very similar management system audit, but it's for environment. Quality is 18 clauses, EMS and the OHS, which is occupational health and safety. They're both 17 elements. So there's oftentimes some difficulty in aligning the two or three standards if you're trying to integrate, the three management systems in just how you do business. That's going to become easier, and I'll show you a couple of slides here that'll explain that further. But you can see the environmental management system also has a very large presence, 200,000 plus registrations globally, currently on Rev 2, going to Rev 3. And the OHS system is the health and safety that's really documented, created in parallel with EMS. So a lot of times what you'll see is companies refer to their 14,000 and 18,000 system together as HSE, health, safety, and environment, just kind of all packaged together. There's not as much of a global presence with the 18,001 because it hasn't been an international standard yet. So sometimes you'll hear people say ISO 18,001. It's actually, there is an ISO 18,001 document, but it has nothing to do with occupational health and safety. The current document is actually BS OHSAS, which is a British standard. In late 2015, early 2016, there will actually be the first release of the OHS standard, which would actually have the number ISO 45,001. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I would suspect that major OEMs, major global organizations will really start to push their supply chain towards being more corporately responsible, socially responsible, with both a growth in the demand for the environmental side and the health and safety of their workforce and their associates. So that's a bit of a quick blitz on the standards. This shows a timeline kind of corresponding to one of the, I think it was slide number 2, where June 2012, really the question was, do we revise the standard? Do we use the standard as is, or does this standard become obsolete? And this is kind of the phases that standard, the 9001 standard, has gone through since June 2012. This was an illustration that I pulled from Quality Digest from last year. Before I go any further, are there any questions at this point?
Hey, my screen sharing still shows as paused. Is that, how do I, there we go. Thank you.
Still shows as paused. Yikes.
Yeah, it's up now.
Okay. That was my fault.
Thanks.
I paused it.
Thanks.
That'll teach you to be quiet and not yell at me earlier. So it was stuck on the first. It was stuck on the first slide.
It didn't have any slides.
Oh, even worse. So
yeah.
First slide. Here's the first slide. That's me. Here's the rules. We went through that. Here's the little illustration, June through September. There's the slide for 9,000, 14,000, and 18,000.
Okay.
Soon to be 45,001. So I'm glad I asked the question, and here you go with that illustration I said I pulled from Quality Digest.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So you can see this little illustration here shows the distribution globally. This is a few years old now, but the distribution globally of all the 9001 certification or registrations that have been issued globally. no surprise that China is way up there. The United States is down in ninth place. Germany is kind of there in the middle, but Germany actually has the biggest concentration, so the biggest per capita of QMS registrations. That doesn't surprise me. You know, the Germans are typically very progressive. Same with Japan on the quality side of things. But there's another interesting statistic here, or figure, and that's their 16,500 standards that ISO is in charge of publishing and updating and maintaining. So the 9001 document is just one of those many, one of 16,500 plus standards, which is a lot of standards to manage. So there are committees within ISO. There's a committee called TC 176, which is the number given to a group of delegates from different countries that sit around the table and argue about the details of the 9000 family. So within that technical committee 176, you'll also see that there are 3 subcommittees. There's one subcommittee that focuses on 9000, one that focuses on 9001 and 9004, and then a subcommittee that focuses on this new document called ISO 10,000 series. So I'll get to what that 10,000 series is here in just a second. So in some of the earlier phases of the discussion of revising the standard, there were surveys that were sent out, and there were over 12,000 responses back from subscribers, technical experts, saying, here's what we think needs to happen in terms of the updates to the international standard. 122 countries collected those responses and then fed those back into TC 176, and that became the primary input for the draft and the direction of where we see the standard going right now. So we are at kind of the top of this stair step. The DIS, or Draft International Standard, was submitted for vote and approved in November of 2014 by nearly 90%, which is pretty outstanding that 90% or so of the voting members said we agree with the direction of this draft, move forward. So right now we're in this FDIS, or Final Draft International Standard phase, and that comes up in June. I believe it's June or July. I don't know the exact date, but that will be voted on. If that passes, which is expected to pass, then the international standard would be published a couple of months after that. So there are some sector-specific connections, obviously, automotive, aerospace, medical, telecommunications. So what those standards are basically waiting on, or those sector-specific standards are waiting on, is that release of 9001, because, 1/3 or 1/2 of their specific standard in, say, automotive for TS 16949, the core of that, or the bottom half of that standard, so to speak, or the text that's in the box, if you're looking at those standards, all come from 9001. So think of, I used this analogy last week, as bad as it was, I liked it. Think of 9001 as like Mr. Potato Head, and then these sectors coming along, and 9000 is the potato with no parts in it, and then aerospace or automotive come along and put their little, eyeballs on the top, and, funky hats and feet and all that sort of thing. So that will be a following result, probably in Q1, Q2 of 2016. So there's a document called Annex LS. One of the questions from a previous forum was, what does LS mean? Well, the answer is the same as, what does 16949 or 45,001. What do those mean? They mean nothing. It's just a serial number. It's basically the next number or the next alpha characters in line that have been assigned to a specific document. So this document called Annex LS is really a standard for management system standards. So Annex LS is a framework that says, hey, look, guys, if you're going to publish a new management system standard, that's fine. The technical committees can go up on their own and see the upgrades or the changes from discussion all the way to release, but just make sure that the contents and the layout are all structured in this 1 through 10 structure. So what that means is if you're looking at a health and safety system, if you're looking at an environmental system, each of these three management systems will now have the same numbering scheme. So if you're going to write a procedure or policy or some sort of documentation on leadership, well, clause 5 will be the same clause irrespective of which of the three standards you're talking about. So I'm really excited about that because the majority of our customers that we work with are very large international global companies. They all have initiatives to control health and safety and environmental and quality. So this is going to help those folks that are responsible for those systems to maintain the system, to design the system, to use, for example, internal auditing. If you have internal auditors, why have 3 internal auditing procedures? Why have 3 internal auditing teams? So it's, that's going to be a very positive effect with the alignment that Annex LS forces these standards to now subscribe to. Any questions? Okay, just want to make sure I paused to ask the question just in case this time somebody would say the audio is not on, and then I would fail all around. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide. So what's the expectation in terms of transition? First and foremost, I would make sure that you're in good communication now with your registrar and with your customers. There's an expected 3-year transition from basically September 2015 to September 2018, but your customer can come along at any time and say, we don't want you to wait till 2018. Or your registrar could say, you need to transition earlier. It's not only possible, but it happened with Daimler Chrysler Tier 1 suppliers back in the early 2000s. So when TS 16949 was released based on the 9001 changes from the 1994 version to the 2000 version, Daimler Chrysler said, surprise, if you're doing business directly with us, you only have 18 months. So don't wait to get surprised with that. I mean, there were a lot of suppliers that were at that tier 1 level that, they just kind of, oh, here's another letter from Daimler Chrysler, I'll throw it in the trash, and, really kind of set some companies spinning out of control. 3 years is a decent amount of time to transition, but if that gets cut in half by your customer, you need to get on the ball right now in the transition. Don't wait until the last quarter 2018. There's going to be a massive traffic jam. That's what happened back in 2003. Everybody wanted to wait until the last minute, and the registrars simply couldn't handle the bandwidth. They didn't have enough auditors. You all know, I would bet that at least 75% on the call right now have you have you have your surveillance audits in the fourth quarter. Don't do that, especially the fourth quarter 2018. It's just going to be a train wreck. So don't wait. Even if you could move your audit cycle to the middle of the year or earlier in the year, I would say Q2, Q3, that's going to help with the congestion that we're going to see late in 2018. So here again is kind of the structure, the layout of the standards, and what you'll see is similar to what we have now. All the stuff kind of here, clause 1, 2, and 3 is really kind of preface stuff, and these sections here, which currently are 5 clauses, clause 5 through 8, now are going to be clause 4 through 10. So there's 7 clauses that will be a part of the new release where you'll see the requirements. So go ahead.
So I've got a question. Like, I'm certified to the AS spec, AS 9100. So ISO is obviously the foundation for all of the specs. So my numbering system will also change, I assume?
Yes.
So now when would be the rollout? Like, do you know when the rollout would be for, like, AS 9100?
I will know more next week. I can tell you this. The chairman of that technical committee spoke at the World Conference last year, and I sat in and actually asked him a couple of questions during one of his talks. The aerospace technical committees are on board with the changes. They're in agreement with the alignment of the changes and reshuffling the deck, so to speak, so that AS 9100C or D, whatever the next rev is going to be,
it'll be D.
Aligns with what's that?
It'll be D.
D, I assume so.
It's right now, so it will be going to D.
Okay. So I cannot say the same thing about the automotive industry. Right now, they're still kind of sitting there with their arms crossed, being pouty little babies because they don't like, somebody doesn't like, and I don't know why, the new approach that 9001 is taking. Automotive is a pain in the butt.
Yep.
That's where I, for some reason, spend the majority of my life. I question that at times. But, come on, guys, you have to make a decision because there's a lot of companies that need to start planning now. I reached out to the communications director at AIAG up in Detroit and asked what's going on. We have webinars. People are asking questions on the automotive side. And his response was basically, you'll know when the rest of the world knows. Mm-hmm. So I used to work up in Auburn Hills around some of these guys, and I just want to, strangle them sometimes with the arrogance. The aerospace folks don't seem to be so tightly wound, at least as it relates to following the structure and building on top of it. Good question.
Okay.
There's another kind of 3 sections that are going to be added, and it's called Annex A. Annex A is clarification. Annex B is QMS principles. And then Annex C is the QMS family of standards, which is the ISO 10000 series. I'll cover that in just a second. I'm going to start highlighting a couple of the, kind of major changes. So are there any other questions before I jump into that? Okay. I'm going to go through this rather quickly as well and then slow down a bit for the risk piece so we can do a bit more deeper dive there. But the first section here is context of organization. So in short, it's very similar to what we see right now with clause 4.1. I think it's A through E or A through G, something like that. The very first requirements of the current standard. there's just a little bit more meat that is required, that's going to be required with the new revision, and that is you need to more clearly define right up front, what is your organization? When you say we are certified to, or we are registered to, and you go out and you announce that to the marketplace, what do you mean by we? What are all your processes? What are the internal versus external processes? Who are your interested parties? Where's that fence line? So I like this illustration because it, it goes hand in hand. This is 4.1 is context of the organization. 4.3 gets a little bit deeper. Where's your fence line? Where's your responsibility start and end? Where are you subbing out a process? Where are you? What processes are heavily dependent on someone that's in a sister plant, a supplier, maybe contract labor, interns, contractors, other contingency workers. So you need to define that very, very clearly up front, and that just makes sense to do anyway. Let's name all of the parts of our management system and make sure that all of our team members and from the management on down understand what all the pieces of the machine are. What are we as an organization? Another subtle change here, which we see already with AS and TS on the automotive and aerospace side and some of the other standards, we need to have better alignment of the quality management system and business objectives. So that's the little illustration towards the bottom, the QMS and the business management system, quality objectives and the business planning and that sort of thing need to be compatible in the same direction. Top management is not a term that's used, which is fine by me. Leadership replaces that term, top management. So you'll start to hear quite a few changes in some keywords that are probably more aligned in the nomenclature of the executive or the leaders of your organization. Leadership is one of those. QMS planning. So 6.1, this is where risk-based thinking is introduced. The idea is that you look at all of the parts of your quality management system and you look for opportunities for improvement. You look at what are some of the threats, what are some of the things that could be risks, what are actual risks, how do we come up with risk-based targets, goals, objectives, getting ahead of problems before they occur, or at least being aware of certain risks and what your tolerance for that risk would be, what your response to risk would be. So I'm a huge fan of SWOT analysis. If you don't know what SWOT analysis is, it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So, Google SWOT analysis if you want, and there's a ton of different articles and tools and papers on it, but it's just a very simple way to evaluate all of your processes in your management system and ask yourself, what are we good at? What are we bad at? Or what opportunities, what could we be better at? What risks are out there? And really planning for those things and being very deliberate about your view on risk and opportunity. So risk, at least as it's defined by the current standard, the draft international standard, is the effect of uncertainty on an expected result. Okay, the current draft international standard does not include the terms preventive action. So, what I will see, I'm a lead QMS auditor for 9001. So I go in and do audits of organizations all the time, and I'll see, I'll ask the question, do you have a CAPA system or a CAR system and a PAR system? And what I normally see is, 1,000 corrective actions and then this one preventive action that was created last week just to kind of pacify me as an auditor. I think that by using risk and risk-based thinking, just those terms and the definitions alone are going to help subscribers to better understand what the intent is of, this requirement that's always been there. It's just maybe it's been a little bit implicit as opposed to explicit. So risk, I think, is really going to shine a lot of light on this proactive approach to known or potential problems. So 6.1 is where we see risk. We also see risk in change management, but the idea is, let's evaluate risk. Let's plan for risk. What's acceptable? What's unacceptable? What's the probability of a nonconformity popping up? So if you look at the illustration here of the kind of the three-dimensional model of the home, think about this as your home, and you're looking, kind of taking the roof off, and you're looking at all of the rooms in a similar way that you'd look at all the processes within your organization, and ask yourself, where is the biggest risk? And what are we doing? Let's say kitchen is the biggest risk, or fire is the biggest risk. Fire is the biggest risk for our health and safety, and it's probably going to happen in the kitchen. So let's get together and plan for that. You can't totally prevent fire, but there are provisions you can put in place within reason to manage that risk should the time come that there is a fire. So it's getting you to think in that way in terms of your planning, your execution, and how you schedule and structure your internal auditing activity. And obviously, high probability. If there's a high probability of a fire, and obviously having a fire is a very high severity, then it's a big darn deal, and you should be spending a lot of time and resources evaluating and managing that risk. So I'm not the best artist in the world. This is about as good as I get here, but hopefully this can help you understand a bit, the concept of really discovering problems before they get out of control, a smoke detector or a heat sensing gauge on your vehicle, the little yellow light and the ding on your gas gauge when your gas starts to get a little bit low. So that's the idea. Let's get ahead of the problem before they get out of control. And then sometimes you can't detect the problem until it does surface. So, let's put controls in place to at least shorten the reaction time and the problem severity, when we're able to. So that's getting ahead of the problem. Here's another example where risk-based thinking kind of looks at prevention, getting ahead in the timeline, getting ahead of the problem before a nonconformance or a failure mode surfaces, taking action prior to the onset of the nonconformity. So here's another example that's kind of maybe a device or a day-to-day use item where maybe slapping a sign here saying no children around the pool is not the most effective way of handling this. So because the severity could be injury or death, drowning, you want to take a higher level of a provision or a prevention measure to mitigate that particular risk. This particular illustration is pointing specifically to that little magnetic lock mechanism that you could put on the fence so that someone that's shorter than a certain height couldn't get through. Although I've had a lot of people say, well, you don't know my kid would just climb right over that fence. That's where you have to weigh what's reasonable. Ideally, yeah, money is no object, and you could just buy your way out of every risk, but that really doesn't exist. Runners stretch prior to strenuous exercise to prevent injury. This particular illustration here shows. I'm going to mute y'all because somebody's getting a little windy. Okay, much better. So here's an example where there's a risk of putting your vehicle in drive or putting your vehicle in reverse prior to putting your foot on the brake. Well, in this case, this is a picture of a Toyota Prius. That risk has been designed out of the product, out of the vehicle. You have to depress your foot to the brake before the car even starts. So that's an example of risk-based thinking in terms of product design, putting a big sticker on the visor that says depress brake before you put the car in gear or you'll run over somebody. That's not effective. That might be something that maybe is a short term at helping to decrease risk by awareness of the operator, but ultimately the better solution is designing that risk out of the equation by making a design change to the product. So there's an example there. As mentioned earlier, risk-based thinking has been implicit to 9001 and the related standard, but the revisions will make it more explicit, more clear. It's part of process approach, and it's meant to include opportunities for improvement as well as kind of the negative view of risk. So proactive approach, protect the customer, improve your organization, be deliberate, and be prepared. So those are kind of the top level things to think about in this risk-based view. So one question that was brought up last week in one of our training courses is, where do I start? I'm a smaller organization, or I've never had to use FMEAs before. I've never had to use maybe a C&E matrix or a fault tree or whatever. So I say the easiest place to start is a simple approach. So similar to using like that SWOT analysis tool, just look at an enterprise level. What are the major risks? Do we have risk of natural disasters? Do we have risk of strike? Do we have risk of key employees that are hard to replace, and we only have one person in that particular role? So ask some of these questions and start from a very high level, and then work your way down to a process level. So similar to looking at the kitchen, let's start very high in terms of the house, and then work our way down to the kitchen being the highest risk room in the house. And let's get everybody that's a user or stakeholder in the kitchen to evaluate the risk at more of a micro level. As I mentioned with the illustration where the kid was trying to get into the swimming pool area, there's really a point of diminishing return here. You can't be – quality practitioners fail at this a lot. And that's because a lot of times quality folks see the world in black and white. They have no concept of actual money. And so that's where I kind of shake them a little bit and go, look, okay, so you could build a fence that's 10 feet high, but where's the money going to come from? So there is this point of diminishing return where you can say, look, I've taken reasonable enough provisions to mitigate that risk or to design the risk out. Anything else is just going to be a waste of money. So somebody said that the screen was on pause again. I'm not sure what's going on, if it's like pausing on its own, but Let me take you off mute.
It's back up now.
It's back up?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what slide it went back on.
Basically, when you went to the mute, that's when we lost control of seeing whatever you were presenting.
You love technology.
Yeah.
So let me backpedal here just a bit. There's the Prius. There's the slide on origins of risk-based thinking, purpose, macro to micro, and then here's an illustration from wearethepractitioners.com, just kind of looking at that point of diminishing return risk while considering time, energy, money, other resources. Being aware of the fact that risk is an aspect that needs to be evaluated in concert with money and resources. Just be reasonable about your approach to risk. So here are some tools: FMEA, failure mode and effects analysis, CNE, and that could be fishbone, or there's also a CNE matrix, which is a different tool than a fishbone diagram. Fault tree analysis, SIPOC diagram, turtle diagrams. I love turtle diagrams because turtle diagrams, I've just never understood this, but I think it's fascinating. I've almost heard or seen two managers fight over turtle diagrams. No, I love them. No, I hate them. So I love to just promote turtle diagrams because for some reason, like, quality dorks love to argue about the good or the bad of turtle diagrams. Whatever, it's a tool. Use it if you want to use it. If you don't want to use a turtle diagram, use a SIPOC. Use something else. But these are just benchmarks that I've seen that are used within industry. And, I look at this lineup here. FMEA is a very complex tool compared to a SWOT analysis or a turtle diagram. These are tools. Feel free to reach out, Google these tools. You can also see some blogs and papers on our website if you want to learn more. So 6.3 is change management. Within the next month or two, I'm going to do one of these webinars where I do a deep dive in change management, similar to what I'm doing in risk management right now. But the idea here is that you need to plan changes, you need to control changes. If a change is extreme, if there's going to be a big impact due to a change, then you need to really take the time to evaluate the risk associated with that change. Okay. There's also a document here that's highlighted that is ISO 31001. I would recommend doing a search for 31001. I would recommend buying 31001 because it's an entire standard on risk. It's risk management. So keep that in mind as you move towards the new standard. That document's a good resource to put in your quality library. Knowledge. This is something that's really replaces the word competency. So the idea here is that you define the necessary knowledge needed to achieve conformity, needed to effectively operate the processes that are within your organization as they're intended to be executed. So you also need to make sure that your team members, your associates, interested parties have access to knowledge, access to work instructions, access to training. You don't have a big honking binder that's locked in the supervisor's office. The employees, the team members within your organization have access to that knowledge. One of the rules I try to use is where the absence of a document or where the absence of specific training could cause a nonconformity, then you need to have a document or you need to have training. Okay. Annex A, this is just more of a, an add-on to the back of the standard for clarification of the new structure, new terms. Here's what we mean throughout the earlier pages of this standard. That's really what Annex A is. Annex B is going to be very similar to what we see now, but we're going from the current 8 management principles to principle 1 through 7. The system approach to management is gone. We see, instead of involvement of people, we see engagement of people. This fight over continual versus continuous, which word should we use, that's going to go away because we're just simply going to see the word improvement used, which again I think is a good move. Evidence-based decision-making versus factual approach, show me the evidence. And then principle number 7 is relationship management. It's not just mutually beneficial relationships between you and your supplier, but this is a more broad relationship management between any interested parties that connect to your organization, employees, partners, contingency workers, suppliers. So it's more of a holistic principle than what we see the current principle 8 is. Annex C is the introduction to ISO 10001, which ISO 10001 is kind of the umbrella for quality management system documents and standards as a whole, and it's meant to help organizations in defining their QMS to drive organizational excellence and, more so in line with the business management system movement rather than a quote-unquote traditional quality system. So what are the next steps? The next steps are, we're 2 to 3 months away from the final draft international standard being approved or voted on, and then we should be looking at the approved standard September, October-ish. So similar to the diagram that you actually couldn't see because the screen was paused, but similar to, let me annotate this. Similar to this timeline in terms of June 2012 to September 2015, that kind of 3-year cycle. You'll see this 3-year cycle once the standard's released, and that deadline for September 2018. So what are some resources that you can use? Obviously, I'm going to highlight some resources that we have because I think they're awesome resources, especially because they're free. And if you go to our website, which is concentric.com, or you can just search Concentric or whatever, you can, if you want to, subscribe to our updates in our newsletters, and you'll get, announcements like our next webinar is coming up, or here's a new paper or article that's been published. I hate email because I get way too many emails every single day, but if you want, you can put your email address in here, first name, last name, hit subscribe, and you'll get updates. Or like I said, if you don't want to do that because you don't need extra emails in your inbox, you can just click on these articles. You can click on key links. These are all hyperlinks to different articles, some written by our associates, some are not, and then key links are kind of under that. You'll also see right now, if you went to our website under this 9001 2015 resources page, you'll see the embedded video from the March webinar. So within a few hours after this webinar today, Ronnie will have up the recording from today. So that's where you'd come back to view that. This is kind of the permanent crew that's typically always in the office unless we're out and about on a project. We have one other guy to add. His name's Michael. He'll be added to this. He's actually graduating next week from the College of Charleston, and will start here in May. But here's how you get a hold of us. You can, surprisingly enough, Facebook, instant messaging has been very, very popular for people to get a hold of me. It bypasses email. Like I said, I hate email because I get so many emails I can't manage it. So if you're interested in connecting with me, Megan, Ronnie, or anybody else, here are various ways that you can do that. I'm also Jim Thompson 2001 on just about any social media. Ronnie made me actually create a Pinterest account, which I think is, I don't know, a little bit wacky, but if you want to see what kind of shoes I like, whatever, you can you can do that too. So, questions, comments, ridicules.
Hey, Jim.
That's good, Jim.
Yeah, go for it. Go ahead.
Jim, this is Jason Kaiser. How you doing?
Hi, Jason. Hey, Jason,
question.
what's up?
You indicated the ISO 31000 is the risk-based thinking, a good tool there. Will this be something that's going to be changed also with the current revisions of the ISO 9000? Is there any linkages there?
It's a totally separate document. I think what you'll see is the other direction that 9001 has taken lessons learned from. From the other standard. There is trying to see where this would be. Yeah, right here. Risk-based thinking with ISO 9001 2015 that one of our guys actually he's in Cincinnati now. He's from your neck of the woods, Jason.
Okay.
That he wrote. You may want to look at that. It's a more comprehensive list of other documents.
Sure.
As well as that ISO 31001. But
all right, sounds good.
Here's the document now. It's 31000 2009. So, I don't know that it won't be upgraded, but it's not the baseline of that standard is not 9001. So,
okay, good.
You had another question?
I wasn't sure if that was associated any with of course, the VDA requirements is what we are talking about, but that's
German QMS.
Yeah, so that's okay. I'm good.
I would assume that VDA will consider 9001, but VDA's way more detailed, and obviously is country specific, just the German automotive manufacturing on highway stuff. But yeah, I will keep an eye on that as a question just to see anything that pops up. In my research, I typically spend, at least 3 or 4 hours kind of pulling information together and doing some reading each month. So if I can spot anything, any papers or articles connecting VDA or connecting 31001, I'll put those here and create a blog.
Good.
So,
okay.
There was another question, I think. Okay. Underneath the articles and the key links, we don't have the dates here yet. That's something I'll have Ronnie get up by the end of this month, which, yikes, is actually tomorrow. That will be where we'll see a listing. You can see a listing of other future forums. So, and then the other thing that I will do, this is already on my conference plan and kind of the takeaways, is anything related to risk that I can pick up at the World Conference next week. I will bring back anything that I can bring back and share with folks about the 2015 changes. I'm specifically going to try to do some deep dive and recon on some sector-specific changes. What are we going to expect in aerospace, automotive, some of these other, healthcare standards and that sort of thing. So I'll bring that stuff back, and you can always kind of see it here. From our homepage, there's a little link right here that says ISO changes. That'll get you to the this reference center. So that's another way to get to it. Any other questions? Comments? Last call? Any feedback at all?
That was good, Jim.
Okay. Thank you. I'll have this recording posted by the end of this week. Hopefully get it up today, actually. And you can view it at any time. So also feel free to reach out to me. Beware of email, obviously, but you can call the office, text me, whatever you want. If there's something I can do to help you out as you move forward, I'm happy to do so. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Yep.
Right.
Bye-bye.